Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military, veterans, and first responders transform their lives from the bedroom to the boardroom. You are here in the Superhero Battle Room, so please don't mess with too many switches. We hope that you go over and don't explode, but our goal is to go over and explode your mind with the great people that we bring in content of their superhero stories from War Hero to Superhero. Today I got Tracy Owens, 30-year Navy veteran. I'm like, wow. I'm like, I hit 20 in about 2 weeks. She has 10 years on me. I'm like, that's amazing. So we're going to hear her transformational story and how she continues to help out military and veterans in the STEP program that she goes over and rolls. But she'll tell you more about it. So we're going to bring her in. So Tracy, thank you for joining.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you for having me.
Oh, very much appreciated. So I want to ask you, tell us your war hero story. 30 years, like how long were you in service? When did you get out? And how was it? Because I'm not sure if you got out yesterday or years ago. I'd love to hear about it.
So happy to tell you my story. So I joined the Navy in July of 1988. I grew up in a small town not too far from San Diego, where I am now. Went down to see the recruiter. Really wanted to be a hospital foreman. So he was like, well, your scores are great, but the wait for school is about 18 months. I was like, I'm not going to wait that long. I'll just go to college and get my nursing degree and go from there. He said, well, here comes the good recruiter deal. He said, there's a backdoor program. If you just go in undesignated, then at the end of boot camp, they'll ask you, what you want to do. You have great test scores. Tell them you want to go into medical field. And it's kind of a backdoor into the school. I said, really? Okay, cool. So 30 days later, I was on a bus to San Diego and flew out to Orlando for boot camp. Well, needless to say, that last week of boot camp came and no one asked that question. They pretty much said, this half you're seaman and this half you're fireman. Well, I was on the fireman. Now, if you know a little bit about my history, the first job I had was a lifeguard and a swim instructor. So I went to boot camp to learn how to be a boiler technician. They sent me to fireman apprenticeship school, and I reported to my first ship as an undesignated fireman. Get to the quarterdeck, and they said, hey, what do you want to do? Which engineering rate do you want to go into? And I thought the best of all the evils was the communications. They said, no, we don't need anyone there. We're going to send you to the B division, which was boilers. So I spent my first 4 years working in a steam room with modified D-type Foster Wheeler boiler. I remember that because my master chief drilled it into my head several times in those first few years. I was the only female in engineering at that time, and my life was pretty difficult. I had pretty much sworn off that the Navy was not for me, and I was not for this job, and I just wasn't going to do it anymore. Until one day, I met a warrant officer. His name is Chief Warrant Officer Sonny Pruitt, who I'm still very close with today, him and his family. He looked at me and he said, hey, kid, what are you going to do when you grow up? And I said, I'm getting out. I'm going to use my GI Bill. I'm going to school. I'm never going back to a ship as a boiler technician. And he said, kid, I see a spark in you. What can I do to change your mind? And little did I know that those words were going to change my life. I thought about it a little bit, and I said, if I could be a legal man, I would stay in the Navy. He said, well, what are you waiting for? Get up, let's get your package in, and you can do that. So lo and behold, we put my package together, and I got picked up as the first boiler technician to ever go to Legalman A school. Successfully graduated A school there, and then started shooting through the ranks. Picked up Chief Petty Officer as an LNC, and then after about a year or so, I submitted my package for the LDO program and commissioned into the LDO law program.
Wow.
I had the opportunity to serve on 4 ships, the USS L.Y. Spear out of Norfolk, Virginia, which was a submarine tender. And then I also served on the Vinson, Nimitz, and the Truman. a ship's company. Served as the discipline officer on board the Carl Vinson. That was my first officer tour. That was an amazing tour, introducing me to the officer ranks and taking care of disciplinary issues for about 5,000 people. I absolutely loved my job. Had the opportunity to serve in almost every community. I served with the submariners, aviation, surface, aviation, and Seabees, I'm forgetting one, and EOD. Spent my first 20 years in Norfolk area, going in and out to sea, sea to shore duty rotation. And my last 10 years I spent in California doing the same thing, rotating between sea and shore.
Wow, that's a lot. That means you probably traveled. How many countries did you hit in the Navy?
I don't exactly have a number, but I've got to see things that I would have never imagined that I would have seen, and gone places that they're just I would have never done if I would not have joined the military.
Wow, I'm going to say this many.
Probably a good count.
So 30 years, so you were able to retire. How was it when you actually retired? Because I'm getting 2 weeks, I'm 2 weeks out from eligible retirement, so it's kind of like, so how was it after 30 years in retirement?
So I think I feel very fortunate, actually. San Diego is a great place. It's very military friendly, and there are so many resources here for transitioning veterans. I was fortunate. I went through the Bob Hope Veterans Transition Program, and I worked with a retired Navy Captain, John Funk, who really walked me through step by step what I needed to do with the resume writing. I started that about a year before I transitioned. And I know that that's really difficult because your mind is still on the mission and your personnel. And we as veterans don't take care of ourselves. We don't tend to put our needs first. It's just the way it is. We weren't trained like that. But I would urge people to make that move. It helped me a lot. Going through that transition program with John, he walked me through the resume writing, the networking, getting to know people in the community and the sector that I wanted to pursue a career in. That really helped. And then I started attending the San Diego Military Family Collaborative about a year before I got out as well, attending their convenings. And that's just a wealth of knowledge, collaboration of all the nonprofits in the organization, working together, helping military and veteran families. And I think that the third one was the San Diego Veterans Coalition, very strong group here in San Diego, and they help transitioning veterans as well. So I was fortunate to have multiple different resources to assist me in that transition.
That's really awesome. So you really had no hard or low points. People just had their hard and low points, and then they helped you to avoid that, which is really awesome. So it sounds like you were able to transform from that war hero to superhero rather quickly because you were already prepared, right?
Well, I think for me, probably the biggest struggle was learning how to talk civilian. Everything is an acronym. Everything has a meaning. I spoke military. I still speak military, but I've learned to, make it so civilian people understand me. The first interview that I went to, I had to stop, and I just told her, I said, I know what I want to say, but I am trying to translate it into English instead of military so that you'll understand it. And she laughed because her father was in the military, and she understood. But that was difficult for me. And I think really narrowing in on what exactly I wanted to do. Having been in the military since, most of your adult life, you don't have those choices. Now you're just free, and you can do whatever you want to do. So that took some time for me to figure it out. I knew from day one I wanted to go into nonprofit. I just didn't know where I fit. So that took that year and a little extra time took me some time to figure out where my place was in the nonprofit community.
So where is that place now then?
I work for Support the Enlisted Project. We're a nonprofit that works with military and their families in the pay grades of E1 through E6 when they're experiencing a financial crisis. A financial crisis would be the loss of a basic life need. So facing eviction or repossession, can't feed their family or put diapers on the baby. Those are some examples. Support the Enlisted Project, or STEP, would step in with resources and education needed, a grant to help them out of their situation and help them focus on their mission rather than being worried about their finances back home.
That's really cool. So they're typically active duty people that are struggling, correct?
It is. We also work with veterans that are transitioning up to 18 months out because we know that transition is hard. And sometimes, especially the end of your service time, that last paycheck doesn't come for a while. So it's a big stumbling block for veterans. We also have some other programs that help offset the cost of certain items. So families don't have to decide whether they're going to pay their electric bill or buy diapers for the baby. We have a Warehouse on Wheels program, which I manage. That has shifted a little bit during COVID because we can't have people come to to our distributions like we would normally do them, or pack our truck up and go to bases all over, our service area. We started doing drive-through distributions where we're serving 300 military families each time. We just had one this last Saturday. We distribute diapers and food, and then we're not state or federally funded, so all the donations come in from corporations, grants, and private donors. So whatever other donations, recently we had the church at Rancho Bernardo, donate 450 movie kits for our families, filled little baskets with games and candy and treats. So we're able to donate those things depending on what we get.
No, that's really cool. And I like the whole, not funded from the government side, because then you can gain as much as you are and not have those restrictions. So that was very smart of STEP to go over and do that. They're a step up in my eyes. So that's really cool. So my last question before we get into the superhero tactics is, why did you decide nonprofit enlisted? Because you said you were an officer. Did you have a heart for the enlisted, or what was the specific reasoning behind it?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I told you that I went in undesignated. Well, I was that sailor. I had financial struggles when I was in E3. I was in Virginia, didn't have any money there. I couldn't afford to get a loan because I couldn't afford to pay it back. Back in the late 80s, an E3 made about $252 a paycheck. I still have a pay stub. You don't make much money. So I bought a car that went out and I couldn't afford to fix it. So I was making payments on a car that I couldn't get it fixed, and I still had to pay for it. So I was broke for a long time. But I know that there's struggles. Then as I got into a leadership position as a chief and as an officer, I told you I was in legal, and I served as a discipline officer and legal officer for most of my commands. But I saw firsthand that it wasn't just me as a young sailor. It was a lot of other sailors that were experiencing those financial struggles that, if you get letters of indebtedness and you have financial problems, you can ultimately lose your security clearance, and it's real issues. So I fell in love with STEP's mission because it was real to me. I was there, been there, done that. And I worked with countless other sailors. I've been out to apartment complexes talking to landlords as a 04, trying to get them not to kick out our sailors, telling them that we're getting them financial help. But STEP does that for the leadership. That is part of my job at Support the Enlisted Project. I am their military liaison. So I go out and work with commands and their leadership and bring our services to them, give them those tools for their toolbox so that they can pass them on to their sailors or their Marines or Coast Guard, whichever service we're visiting. STEP works with military across all services.
That's really cool. That's really awesome to go over and hear that. Another thing I'm going to put in my quiver as I'm connecting with veterans and military, especially in the SoCal area. So I'd love to go hear your 3 superhero tactics, because you got equipped. You were like, had the retirement, you had somebody mentoring you, stuff like that. So what about the 3 superhero tactics that either you developed or somebody transitioned or gave to you that you can give to the rest of our audience?
So I think think ahead. That was, someone told me that a couple years before I transitioned, to really start focusing on yourself, as hard as that is, to get your medical record together, to get your ducks in a row, make sure your records were up to date, all those things. I think that's very helpful. I think taking care of yourself, as hard as it is, you have to do it. You have to get out there, get your paperwork submitted to the VA or whichever way you're going. If you have your disability claims and all those things, I personally used DAV to help me with that process, because we don't know as active duty folks what we're even looking at. We can fill out a form, but we don't know all the ins and outs and what they want or how they want it written. DAV did that for me. I went and sat down for a couple hours. Before I knew it, I was walking next door, dropping my claim off, and I was done. Very easy process. And that information was given to me by someone who had just retired and went through the process themselves. And then I think talking to people who have recently retired or got out, not someone who got out years ago or 20 years ago, because things have changed. I found it very easy to navigate those systems just by listening to people that have recently gotten out. Those are gems for you as a transitioning veteran, whether you did 5 years or 30 years or more. Talk to those folks. You don't have to do everything that they say, but at least look into it and arm yourself with all the tools that you possibly can so that you can be successful.
Yeah, that's definitely key. When I got on in 2012, it's like I had a boatload of information, and then I'm dealing with other stuff, and then I kept the books at least to connect with those resources. But you don't want to do what I did, learn and live in that regard, and then you're just hitting over and over and over again. So try to learn and live as our brand is, to go and do that. So that was great wisdom to bring to the table. So as we're closing out, we always like to uplift the organization that with the veteran, the war hero superheroes with. Can you tell us a little more about STEP SoCal and how people can get connected? Is it Invest for Web? Do they have text opportunities, those types of things?
So you can reach us at Support the Enlisted Project at our website, which is there on the screen, www.stepsocal.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We have lots of different events and volunteer highlights. We have, all of our resources listed there. If you need assistance, you can apply on our website. You can also contact us at info@stepsocal.org.
That's awesome. So definitely want to thank you for going over and joining our show. Thank you for the audience that's going over and listening, and definitely take advantage of this wisdom. If you haven't been listening for the 19 minutes and 5 seconds is counting, that's okay. But if you want to uplift Tracy to the next level, go on our TV show that distributes through 15 different platforms, 10 to 14,000 and rising each and every week. All you have to do is take 3 seconds of your time to give her a review. We want you to glean off all the wisdom, but if you're trying to just support Tracy in this, just give 3 seconds of time in the next 3 days. If she gets the most views, then we uplift her to the TV show so that message can get out broader and bigger, because we know a lot of our veterans are scattered. We want to get into every place as possible to go over to support. So Tracy, I want to thank you for joining. Any final words before we close out?
No, thank you very much for having me today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing with our audience. And we'll see you tomorrow in another episode of War Hero Superhero. Thank you.